Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video we're talking about a Chad. Maybe even the Chad. And that, my friends, is Chad Trollin Isaak. What a name. What a guy. Chad is the man from Mandan, and he was a chiropractor in North Dakota. We're back there again, so happy days. And when all the pieces of the puzzle point at Chad, well, you gotta ask who put it together. Because it doesn't take a genius to figure out where it leads, but why is still for grabs. Alright, so here, what do you say we give it a go, you and I, come on. Alright, so almost smack dab in the middle of North Dakota lies the city of Mandan. It's home to about 22,000 people, and it's part of the Bismarck metro area. And what can you find in Mandan that you can't find literally anywhere else? I don't know. Its motto is where the West begins, and if this is where it begins, you'll be praying for the end. It's an agricultural livestock town, but more recently power, drilling, the oil fields to the north have taken over. Watch the video on Dougie Carlisle for more on that one. And if you lived in the Bismarck Mandan area, you may have rented from RJR Maintenance and Management, who, well, maintained a load of places in the local area. About 3,000 of them. A family business in that, since the late 90s. Having a little over 20 employees. Let's meet some of them. 4 to be precise. Bill and Lois Cobb, 50 and 45 respectively, had been married for many, many years, with 4 children and 3 grandchildren. Bill, he worked as a maintenance supervisor, Lois in accounts. Adam Fuhrer was 42 years old and he worked at RJR Maintenance as whatever you need to do in air conditioning, toilets, whatever. And finally, Robert Fockler, who was in fact a co-owner with his wife of RJR. The 4 were known as the Coffee Club. They'd always be in there first thing in the morning, going through an entire pot before anyone else arrived, hanging out, shooting the shit. By all accounts, they were lovely, caring people. Tenants of theirs had really nothing but nice, kind things to say about them. They were very easy to deal with. They were grand. Never really any snags to speak of. Except for one in early April 2019, when a person was, they were going to have an employee of RJR come over to their apartment to do a walkthrough, right? They never showed up. This person, they were looking at the clock, no show from RJR, so they decided to pop over to their office to see, what's the crack. And they were greeted by sirens.
911, what is that? A severe emergency.
1106 32nd Avenue Southwest in Mandan at RJR office. Owner's down bleeding profusely.
You know what happened?
No, I walked into work and I found him on the floor.
Do you want additional units?
On the 1st of April 2019, at about 7:30 AM, ambulances were called to the offices of RJR Maintenance by an employee who had just arrived. Unfortunately, this was no April Fool's Day. This was quickly transferred over to the police, who rocked up to the office building in southeast Mandan to find a scene. Inside were the bodies of 4 victims, 3 male, 1 female. They were, you guessed it, Robert Fockler, Adam Fuhrer, and Bill and Lois Cobb. All 4 had been stabbed and shot to death. How the victims were killed was not released at the time, but this was, obviously, it would be big news anywhere, but especially big news in Mandan, a city that hadn't had a homicide since 2016. And the police were saying they didn't have a suspect in custody.
Police are releasing few details at this point, and we still don't know how many bodies have been found or the cause of death. However, when officers arrived, they did find more than one body. The Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Morton County Sheriff's Office are still investigating right now, and I recently spoke to a few bystanders who were at the scene.
I had a walkthrough scheduled of move out, and they never showed, and I came here to see what was going on, and I stayed. They've been great people to lease from, always very courteous and kind and caring, and so I just want to know that they're all right. They're good people.
Today, Mandan police investigating after finding several bodies at a property management building in Mandan this morning.
And there is a press conference that started about 30 seconds ago. Let's listen in.
So as soon as this investigation is underway, a lot of the information you're going to ask me, I cannot answer. It's very important that our investigators have the ability to follow up and look into leads and everything else before any of those questions can be answered.
And so with this hurricane, they spread out from there trying to find out who did this. And one of the first things they did was go around to local businesses, shops, that sort of thing, and ask them, hey, if you have any video surveillance, CCTV maybe, here, lash it over to us there, would you mind? And they would. This would then eventually lead to a man named Chad Isaak. 44 years old, who on April 4th, 2019, 3 days after the murders, at about 3:46 p.m, well, Chad was arrested and charged with 4 counts of murder, burglary, concealment of a vehicle, and unauthorized use of a vehicle. He was arrested at a traffic stop, and a search warrant of his vehicle led to more evidence being discovered. More evidence that did not look good for Chad.
Take them to, there's a, Dale and Julie live across the street from me, and he knows them.
Weirdly, this was something he's pretty happy about. Look at him, he's chuffed. The one thing that really stands out is during his arrest, right? He never once asked why he was being arrested. But why is something we are certainly asking Chad. Something we are still asking to this day. Chad Isaak was living in Washburn at the time. That's a small town about 40 minutes north of Mandan City. And what he did, let me tell you, well, okay, no, I'm just referring to his occupation for now. And what he did for a living was crack the back. Dr. Chad, at your service. I hope he didn't look at patients with those Manson lamps. He was a licensed chiropractor. A license he was issued in 2009, and until 2019, so for a decade, he had a clean record. No complaints. He operated, if that's what you'd say, out of his office on Main Street, Washburn, his signage being oddly prophetic. Chad was a native of Riverdale, not the Netflix show North Dakota, and he graduated high school in 1992. From there, he joined the US Navy. He'd remained there for 5 years, being sent off to Hawaii. Remember Pearl Harbor, because that's where he was based. And he would end up marrying, in 1995, a local Hawaiian woman. They would have a daughter together, followed by a divorce together in 2000, leading to a number of court encounters over child support payments. It was in the year 2006, after moving around a bit, Nevada, Iowa, North Dakota, and studying nursing for a time, and that's when he realized his gosh darn, excuse my French, dream of becoming a, hey, give me your back, I'm gonna crack. See, Chad had been a football fanatic in high school, but an injury, fractured vertebrae, cut short his dreams of a scholarship. He saw a number of different medical professionals to treat his back. 'Twas fucked, and they were all unhelpful. You know, all that until he went and saw a chiropractor and saw the light. Now, you think like details about Chad's life would kind of be everywhere, you know, after he was arrested and what he was arrested for, but no, not really a whole lot is known about Chad Isaak. Maybe because there's not really a whole lot to know. He was a quiet guy, he kept to himself. Police, they spoke to his patients. The unanimous verdict was, well, didn't really know him or much about. Quiet, calm, didn't say much. No criminal record. The most of his, interactions with the police were, a few years earlier, he was driving in North Dakota without a seatbelt. So his arrest for a quadruple homicide was a bit like, really? Him? Egg? But Chad did have a connection, right, to RJR. That being, he lived in a trailer park that was maintained by them. So how did the police arrive here, right, on Dr. Chad's doorstep? Well, what led the police to Chad was, quite simply, his Ford F-150. See, the morning of the 1st of April, the police, doing their due diligence and checking nearby CCTV footage, on the surveillance footage, they saw a man entering the RJR building at about 6:47 a.m. Less than 20 minutes later, he was out, and they had a suspect profile: orange mask, orange jacket, dark pants, shoes, gloves. At 7:08 a.m., the man was seen leaving in an RJR vehicle. Surveillance from a few buildings along the way showed the car speeding off before being ditched, and then CCTV showed the fellow walk to a parked Ford F-150 in a McDonald's car park. It was in that McDonald's that someone actually called 911 to report a suspicious guy wearing a camouflaged mask on a remarkably warm morning. There was no other activity until about 7:19 a.m. when another employee arrived to the office for another day at work. They were in the car, had a smoke, eventually walked in, saw Robert on the floor. He thought he had a heart attack or something, so, he ran over, rolled him over, then to do some chest compressions, and that's when he saw blood. The emergency services then arrived about 7:30, thereabouts. So, that white Ford F-150 was determined to be the suspect's vehicle pretty quickly. And 2 days after the murders, a BOLO alert was put out. And it just so happened, right, that one of Chad Isaak's patients was a county sheriff's lieutenant, one of the many people who received that BOLO. This guy knew full well what car Chad drove. So, on the morning of the 4th of April, he drove over to Chad's trailer park and took pictures of his truck. Chad was watching him as he did so. The markings, the rust, the logo stickers, dirt spots, dead giveaway. He contacted the Bureau of Criminal Investigations agents, and after looking at their CCTV, he thought the walk was the very same. And so, on the 4th, Chad was arrested at a traffic stop. Chad had scratches and bruises on his knees. He said they were from his dog and from tripping and falling. Definitely not from murdering people at close range, A search of Chad's place revealed there was a very strong smell of bleach. They found the very same clothing seen in CCTV, a reversible mask, and weapons. A knife found in the washing machine with a bent tip, and a gun believed to have been used in the murders. Shell casings were also found that matched the number of rounds fired at RJR. Shoes, similar to those seen in the CCTV footage, were found. 16 pairs of them. When you know what you want, you know what you want, I guess. Ammo stored in a microwave. That doesn't seem safe, but hey, you gotta put them somewhere. Traces of blood were also found on his truck.
A man has been arrested in connection to the 4 murders in Mandan, North Dakota this week. The suspect, 44-year-old Chad Isaak, was pulled over about 40 miles north of Mandan. He's being held on 4 counts of felony murder. Police say the victim suffered either stab wounds and/or gunshot wounds.
Not guilty. That's the plea from accused murderer Chad Isaak.
Now, a motive. This is obviously a horrendous, brutal, gruesome crime to do to 4 people. Why would somebody do that? Good question. To date, hasn't been answered. Now, obviously, he was targeting his landlords, right? So, rumors abounded, and you gotta think, they were gonna raise the rent on him. They were gonna kick him out. They were gonna kick his dog out. Everybody was talking about this at the time. Police followed up on all of these, theories about why he could have done this, and all of them proved untrue. By all accounts, and by, speaking to employees at RJR, Chad had minimal interactions with them, and when he did have interactions with them, they were grand. After multiple delays, the trial began in August 2021, 854 days after 4 people were brutally slain.
April 1st, 2019 is a day that many people will never forget. It's the day that Justin Bachheim walked into work at RJR Maintenance and Management Company and found his boss, Robert Faulkner, lying on the shop floor, covered in a pool of blood. It's the day that paramedics arrived at what they believed was a cardiac arrest call, only to find their victim covered in stab wounds. And it's the day that Mandan police officers arrived at that same crime scene, conducted a protective sweep of the premises, and found not 1, not even 2, but 3 additional victims. William Cobb, Lois Cobb, and Adam Fuhrer. Each one covered in gunshot wounds and stab wounds.
With the prosecution saying this is what happened that morning. On the 1st of April at 5:25 a.m., the suspect, Chad, parked his truck at McDonald's, about a 15-minute walk from RJR. This was something he had done a trial run on a week before, on the 25th of March, travelling there early that morning. This was the planning and preparation, the prosecution were going to show that he fully knew what he was doing. At 6:30 a.m., Bill and Lois Cobb entered the building after having a smoke. 15 minutes later, Chad was seen following them in. At 7 a.m., Adam Fuhrer entered the building. At 7:06, Robert Faulkner entered. They were walking into a buzzsaw. The suspect then left, stole Robert's truck, and then ditched it 3 minutes later, going back to his own. The victims were all in different parts of the building. He followed the Cobbs in and then was waiting for whoever else would walk in. Bill had been shot between a minimum of 4 times to a maximum of 8. He also had been stabbed 28 times. Lois had been stabbed 48 times, 16 times to the face and neck alone. She also had been shot in the chest. Adam, he was shot 3 times, twice in the back, once in the front. He was also stabbed 11 times. Robert Faulkner was stabbed 11 times and had numerous wounds to his face. 3 of those stab wounds injured his heart. He wasn't shot at all. So he was seen at RJR wearing orange, and then at McDonald's wearing black. He changed his clothing along the way. A special agent from the Bureau of Criminal Investigations said this was quite interesting. Right, he's wearing all orange. That's, hunter's clothing. He wore hunter's clothing when he was hunting people. He then changed his clothes at some point to dark clothing to avoid being seen. He failed. So you can kind of see how, all roads, right, lead to Chad. So what did the defense have to say?
Law enforcement has mammoth resources now to investigate anyone. Some of these are public searches, many are not. What did the law enforcement officers find doing this sort of investigation about Dr. Isaak? Nothing. incriminating. No criminal history of any kind, either in the military or civilian world. No bankruptcies, no lawsuits, nothing of any consequence to make him a suspect in any crime, much less a crime of this magnitude.
Well, they disputed all of this. No shit. That the integrity of the crime scene, was compromised. That Chad, no problems with RJR, but other tenants and some other ex-employees were disgruntled and had made threats. That basically, the police did a piss-poor job of investigating these murders. But most of all, they said, all the evidence was circumstantial, right? Nothing definitively proved he was there that morning, or did it?
Other evidence. Law enforcement even ignored relevant evidence near the crime scene. On July 2nd, several months after Dr. Isaak was arrested, RJR employees find a bullet, an intact bullet, in a gravel area near RJR. So they thought this might be relevant to the crime that happened, a bullet. Law enforcement takes the bullet, but they don't test it or investigate further because it didn't match any evidence they had seized from Dr. Isaak. Other tips had come in, and very few were followed up on in any detail. Other people with motive, recall the list of angry residents. BCI did no follow-up here. They did assign some follow-up to the Mandan Police Department. There were some half-hearted interviews in the fall of 2019, but nothing substantive. Only a fraction of the people on the list were even called. Most could not be located or interviewed. Same thing with disgruntled employees. Law enforcement believed that they solved this case in 4 days, and they spent many months trying to prove that they were right. They weren't. They simply confirmed what they believed, and they ignored the rest. At the conclusion of this trial, I'm going to appear before you again and ask that you find Dr. Isaak not guilty of all charges. Thank you.
By all accounts, he had good relations with the management company. And although Chad had cancelled appointments the morning of the shootings, people who saw him in the afternoon of April 1st, they said he was fine, no different than usual, didn't see anything odd about his mental state or his physical state. Though, when Chad cancelled chiropractic appointments on the morning of the 1st of April, he told his patients, he couldn't see them. He had a dental appointment. Checking in with the dentist he went to, his regular, he hadn't been there since May 2017. He hadn't been there in 2 years. And he certainly was not there the morning of the 1st of April.
Throughout the testimony in this case, you have heard that investigators followed that evidence. That evidence figuratively and literally led us to Chad Trollen Isaak. His vehicle matches the suspect vehicle in all unique features. Considerable effort had been taken to wash and bleach the suspect clothing and to bleach weapons.
They solved this crime in 4 days. Unfortunately, they didn't. They spent several months trying to prove that they were right. They weren't.
And that was that.
I'll read the jury's verdict at this time. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled action, do find the defendant, Chad Trollen Isaak, number 1, as to the offense of murder of Lois Cobb as charged in count 1 of the information, guilty. Number 2, as to the offense of murder of William Cobb as charged in count 2 of the information, guilty. Question 3. As to the offense of murder of Adam Fuhrer, as charged in count 3 of the information, guilty. Number 4. As to the offense of murder of Robert Faulkner, as charged in count 4 of the information, guilty. Members of the jury, is this your unanimous verdict?
Yes.
The grief we feel for the 4 lives we tragically lost on April 1st, 2019 isn't something that a trial will fix.
A trial 2.5 years in the making has come to an end.
Honestly, it didn't take care of anything. We don't know why. It's changed us, and we'll never get that back.
Chad Isaak, being found guilty, now faces life in prison without parole. No word on when the sentencing will be, but it won't be good for him. And that's the end of that L1. What a strange case. As I said, no motive has ever been revealed, if there even was one at all, and not that they needed to prove there was one, but what a thing to do for seemingly no reason at all. He was a loner, but he had a seemingly successful business. For him to just snap and brutally murder four people he didn't really have any connection at all with. Why? We may never know, but that's not a snap. That's a full-on rupture from reality. But that's the story of Chad Isaak and what he did. We don't know why. We don't know the full extent. We're just trying to, piece together the pieces of the puzzle that were left behind. Hopefully, someday we will know. But not today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. Here, go on. I'll see you as always real soon in the next one. Until then, please take care of yourselves. My care.